Looking for NFL football? Stop right here. You found your home for weekly NFL talk and fantasy football. Coming to you live from the BackupPunter.com. This is the Backup Punter Podcast. Now, here's your host, the man who thinks fullbacks win championships, Keegan Matheson.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. My name is Keegan Matheson. This is the Backup Punter Podcast, brought to you from the BackupPunter.com. Check me out on Twitter at the Backup Punter. Subscribe on iTunes. You can find me on YouTube now as well. The Backup Punter Podcast has a YouTube channel, if that fits your fancy a little bit more. Now, as always, the Backup Punter Podcast, it's brought to you by the good people at DynastySportsEmpire.com Fantasy Sports. So whether you're into NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, check out DynastySportsEmpire.com. They'll get you covered. Check them out right now at DSE_football on Twitter. Get yourself joined up with a Dynasty Fantasy Football League today. Leagues start at $50. It's the most fun you can have playing fantasy football. Check them out. Tell them I sent you. Now this week, we're going to kick off our series of previewing the league, division by division. Today we're going to go with the AFC North and the AFC East. We're going to go around the country, look at every team. And with each team, we're going to look at who they've gained, who they've lost, and, of course, the odd fantasy football tidbit in there. But one reason that they're going to win, that they're going to make the playoffs, and a reason to worry. What has to go wrong for this team to kind of fall flat, to disappoint? Because, what is NFL football without irrational reasons to worry? And I'll try to take some stabs at what I see these teams' records being in terms of the standings. Now, please don't write these down and try to add them up and see if they equal the win and loss total available in the NFL, because it won't. I'm probably more optimistic with some of these teams than most people. But we'll go through and see what I think about these team by team. And we'll be doing this for the next 4 weeks. If any news does pop up along the way, of course, we'll get to that. There's surely some news with the Tom Brady appeal coming down over the next few days. I'm recording this on Sunday, late Sunday. So I'm assuming the second I hit stop here, the news is going to come out. That's how it goes. But let's get started in the AFC North. The first team I'm going to look at in this series is the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are a fascinating team to watch build, because there is a lot of times where they have to kind of take their lumps, let players go at a high value. They did it with Pernell McPhee this year. Couple other players they've lost this year. Torrey Smith, will he be much of a loss? I really don't think so. Owen Daniels on offense as well. They had to deal Haloti Ngata to the Detroit Lions. But they have added some stuff too. Now they've added Kendrick Lewis at safety, playmaker. He's really going to help the back end of that defense. And Kyle Arrington, probably after the big rush of free agency, the Ndamukong Suh rush of free agency calmed down, Kyle Arrington might be the best signing that any team made. He's going to walk in and play that slot corner. He's going to be incredible for the Ravens. They also kept Justin Forsett, which was big for them too, because they didn't really have a proven running back there. Now, what I'm looking for with Baltimore, number one, can Joe Flacco stay above the Joe Flacco line, which for my regular listeners, you know what that is. But for anyone new, I consider Joe Flacco to be the base of what a quarterback can be for a playoff team. If you're worse than Joe Flacco, your team can't really be a playoff team that's going to make any noise. Joe Flacco is the floor. So as long as he can be himself, Brashad Perriman's going to need to help out by replacing Torrey Smith, taking the cap off of defenses. And I think that is really the big thing they need for this team to get over the hump. Not just make the playoffs. I think they can make the playoffs quite easily. But to make some noise. Out of training camp last week, Brashad Perriman reportedly had 4 or 5 drops in one day. Bad ones, too. That's not going to fly. It's okay if you make a drop on a 5-yard slant. Forgive it. Get the next one. If you get open 50 yards down the field and Joe Flacco hits you in the hands and you drop it, that's not going to fly. That's going to cost your team big time. Now, Brashad Perryman, similar skill set to Torrey Smith. He is probably not going to be a 100-catch guy. He's going to be a big play, downfield guy, and a lot of his value is just going to be running the deep route when the ball doesn't even come to him. Taking the top off the defense, dragging some safeties up high to let Steve Smith work. They've also got Kamar Aiken there, Michael Campanaro. They got Brown in there at wide receiver. One of these guys is going to step up. Do not sleep on DeAndre Carter, undrafted free agent this year. I think he's going to make some noise too at a training camp. But are there enough options there to really give Joe Flacco that great offense? To really let Mark Trestman build a great offense there? And he's an extremely talented coach. The Chicago experience just kind of torpedoed that. What can Max Williams do in year one? The rookie tight end. Well, looking back at the recent drafts, rookie tight ends have not done much of anything, and a big reason for that is blocking. To get on the field, these tight ends have to be able to block when called for, because if they can't block, then when they're on the field, the opposing team knows it's a passing situation. They are if this was a poker game, having that rookie tight end on the field would be their tell. And teams can't afford that. That's why you see a guy like Eric Ebron. Pretty bad rookie season. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, even though I think he's going to break out this year, he had a pretty quiet rookie season, just over 200 yards, and that's nothing. That's third-string running back receiving numbers. So if they're going to win, they need this offense to get over the hump. And that could be the thing that holds them back. Now, the thing that's going to push them is a very underrated defense. I think people have not really moved past the entire Haloti Ngata, Ed Reed, Ray Lewis age. They think since that's not there anymore, that the defense is no longer a threat. And you couldn't be more wrong with that sentiment. Timmy Jernigan's a monster. I think he's going to have a massive year. Carl Davis was one of the best picks in the draft. If he clicks there, it's going to be more mental than physical with him. But if Carl Davis clicks there in the middle of that line, Ozzie Newsome knows what he's doing more than almost anyone in this league when it comes to the draft, especially drafting defensive players. I think that defense is going to be absolutely fine. And I think they're going to have a really big year. In fantasy football, I know a lot of you aren't dying to draft a defense, but if and when you miss out on the Seattle, the Buffalo, don't be afraid to draft the Ravens defense. They are going to be good. Now, the prediction I've got for the Baltimore Ravens, I see them in around a 10-6 team, no higher, maybe a 9-7, 10-6. This division is going to beat the crap out of each other, quite frankly. If you put the Ravens or the Steelers, Bengals in another division, they might squeak out another win on their record. But this is going to be a tough division this year. So I see them around 10-6 at best, pushing for the top spot in the division, but this division is going to produce more than one playoff team. I can guarantee you that. Next, we'll look at the Cincinnati Bengals. Quietly, strangely, they've made 4 straight postseasons. They added Ajayi Hawk this year, who, I cover the Green Bay Packers for NFLSpinZone.com. Ajayi Hawk is, he's over the hill. He's done in terms of physical playmaking, but he's an extremely intelligent player, so he'll be he's still got a high enough floor. He'll hold it together on the inside, but don't expect anything big. Then they got Michael Johnson back, who was only gone for a year, really didn't do much with his massive contract, but the Bengals only had 20 sacks last year. 20. It's nowhere near good enough. That's not going to do a thing in the playoffs. The Bengals didn't really lose anyone that's going to cripple them. They've kept things mostly together, and they're building that power running game. Cedric Abui, Jake Fisher, with their first couple of picks in the recent draft. Jeremy Hill, if you look at the second half of last year, he was arguably one of the top 3, top 5 running backs in the entire game. If I have any opportunity to draft Jeremy Hill this year, even if it's a little above his ADP, I'm jumping on it. Giovanni Bernard, he's still getting some love in fantasy football. I think he's going to disappoint you unless you get him well past his ADP. I'm not running out to get him right now because his style of running is not what this offense is being built for. This is being built for Jeremy Hill to pound the football and for Andy Dalton to just do enough to keep passing in the minds of the defense. And that worries me a little bit, because where does A.J. Green fit in this? A.J. Green is an elite receiver, downfield threat, talented, quicker than anybody thinks. People see these 6'4" receivers, they don't really give them any credit for their jitterbug traits, their abilities to get in and out of cuts and their routes. A.J. Green runs incredible routes. He was banged up last year, but he could really get back to his old self this year, and that is a easy top 10 receiver with top 5 talent. But if this is a power running team, one that's probably going to throw a lot of short passes, that might limit his value. He doesn't have that 1,500, 1,600 yard potential that he would have on a more vertical offense. So I worry that they're not going to include him enough. But at the same time, maybe the running game can draw in the safeties, and A.J. Green gets opened up for a couple of those deep routes. We'll have to see how that happens, but they need to involve him as much as possible. Another reason I think that the Bengals could struggle this year, a reason they might lose, is that lack of sacks. Are they going to get to opposing quarterbacks enough? Are they going to get to Ben Roethlisberger and Joe Flacco? And when they do, are they going to bring them down? Because these are big men. I don't know if they will be able to. I don't know if they've done enough. Michael Johnson, that's nice. It's all well and good that he came back, but he didn't have a great season last year. So I think it's going to have to be a little more schematic than personnel-based. Now, other than Jeremy Hill, a reason that I do see the Bengals succeeding this year, one thing that I do see clicking in their offense is Tyler Eifert. Now, he's battled injuries, a former high pick, big body, 6'6", over 240 pounds, if my memory serves right now. I think that he could be one of the big breakout fantasy football tight ends this year. He's a guy, along with Austin Seferian-Jenkins, that I'm probably going to come back and grab in the 14th, 15th round if I've got all my bases covered. Eifert's going to be the guy that really benefits from when the linebackers get sucked in by Jeremy Hill. There's going to be a lot of work for him in the red zone, so he's going to be a big touchdown guy, and I like him a lot. Now, I see the Bengals being very similar to the Ravens, just like I see the Steelers being similar to those two teams. I see the Bengals maybe being more around a 9-7, possibly up to the 10-6. Their talent on that team doesn't seem worthy of that record, but they always end up there. Coach Lewis knows what he's doing, and I see no reason why they won't end up back there, especially with that power running game that Gio Bernard didn't really offer them. So maybe the Bengals are more of a wild card push when you look at the playoff picture in the AFC. Now, we'll talk about the Steelers now. I want to save the Browns for last. I love to talk about the Browns. I'll do it any chance I get. So we'll get to the Steelers first. A couple big additions they made. One that's extremely important, DeAngelo Williams. In at running back for Le'Veon Bell for the first 3 games. And I'll touch on him again here. With DeAngelo Williams, if you are getting through the first 5-6 rounds of your fantasy draft, and it just hasn't worked out for you to get your starting running back yet, grab DeAngelo Williams and start him for 3 weeks. By the start of week 4, there's going to be somebody pop up on waivers. If there isn't a dark horse fantasy starting running back on waivers by week 4, I'll eat my hat. There is every single year. And as long as you can be the guy that jumps in and grabs him on waivers, then DeAngelo Williams is the perfect guy to bridge you to a waiver wire starter. It's risky, but I'm saying if you are just getting shut out, everyone's picking your guy right ahead of you and you miss out on those top 11 or 12 running backs, take a little flyer on DeAngelo Williams. He is old, but he is extremely gifted physically, and you know there's room for a lot of usage in this offense. Another big addition there is Bud Dupree, an extremely gifted athlete himself. He's going to play that outside linebacker position. Strong, thick. He's got the talent to develop a really, really powerful bull rush, I think, on the outside there. It might not be this year that he reaches his full potential, but out of the edge rushers in the 2015 draft, I had him ranked very highly, close to the top, especially when you look at the potential ceiling. He'll help to fill the void left by Jason Worlds, who retired, actually quite early this year. But let's be honest here, the Steelers' biggest loss is Dick LeBeau, defensive coordinator. It's been a long time since they've been without Dick LeBeau. Are his schemes going to stay, carry over? Is the defense going to go through a transitionary period? I don't know. But Bud Dupree and Jarvis Jones on the edge, that is young. That is fast. That is exciting. Now, a reason for the Steelers to win this year, they're going to win if they get some secondary production from their offense. I'm talking about Martavis Bryant, Marcus Wheaton, Sammy Coates. A lot of speed, a lot of talent right there. Martavis Bryant is really turning into a hot name in fantasy right now. And why not? He is a number 2 receiver, most likely, on every down, for an offense that really likes to sling the football around, probably especially in those first few games. Something that's going to help out Bryant, maybe even Marcus Wheaton if you need a streamer some week, but especially Martavis Bryant, is that the Steelers aren't going to be blowing teams out this year. There's going to be a lot of times where they are down in the game, and they need to throw their way back into it. Antonio Brown is a known commodity. Other teams are going to throw their Darrelle Revis, their Patrick Peterson, Richard Sherman at Antonio Brown. That opens up Martavis Bryant, and he has shown a nose for the end zone. His ADP might get a little out of control, but I do believe in Martavis Bryant, and I wouldn't mind having him on my roster as long as it's okay value. It doesn't even need to be great value, as long as it's okay. Now, the reason the Steelers will lose this year, something to worry about, it's that secondary. Senquez Golston, Cortez Allen, Antoine Blake, William Gay. There's not a lot of size there. There's not a lot of size whatsoever. What will they do against an AJ Green? That really worries me. Are they going to be able to keep a cap on someone like Brashad Perryman? I don't know. They can shut down the Browns receivers, of course. But I'm not sure if there's enough physicality, enough physical talent, enough athleticism in that secondary. And again, that's why I think this Steelers team is going to get involved in some absolute barn burners. Some 40-35 type games. Because even though there's some talent on that defense, they're really going to be stretched thin by this secondary. And I think that was a bit of a mistake on their part this offseason to really let that secondary get to the state that it's in right now. So looking at a prediction for the Steelers, I love the Steelers, but I'm not as high on them as a lot of people. I see them being more of a 9-7 team with a risk to be worse because they are really walking a fine line. Injuries could really torpedo them. Forgot to mention it off the top, but they are without Troy Polamalu. He was kind of important to their defense. I see them pushing for the wild card, and ultimately, if it's a tight race, I can see them winning because you have to believe in Ben Roethlisberger over Andy Dalton and the Bengals. But it's really going to be a tough road for the Steelers, I think, in 2015. Now, last, we're going to look at the Cleveland Browns, mercifully. They have added Dwayne Bowe, Brian Hartline, Josh McCown. That's their new offense, which is comical, which is horrendous, which is laughable, which is satirical almost on a real offense. We'll get to that in a moment. They've also added Tramon Williams, the cornerback. I don't know if he has too much left. He'll have another good year left at least across from Joe Hayden. Added Danny Shelton, which will be one of the most impactful defensive rookies in this class, I believe, especially in this defense. That will be really important. Lost Jordan Cameron, again, so that's another knock against the offense. This quarterback position, not to mention the disaster they have at wide receiver. Year after year, they've just refused to address wide receiver. I don't know why. They had a Terrell Pryor as a wide receiver. What a gong show that will be. That's not going to go anywhere, by the way. But Josh McCown is an old quarterback who had a handful of good games for the Chicago Bears, and it's still making him money. Despite the fact that he went to Tampa Bay and was terrible. And it's one of these things that frustrates me about the Browns, because all they try to do is band-aid the roster. They don't try to build organically, build towards a championship, and it comes down to the fact that they have the worst ownership in the NFL. Close to having the worst ownership in pro sports. It's an obsession with just get to the playoffs next year. We're not going to really build towards a Super Bowl, but get into the playoffs. Maybe we'll make another game worth of concessions, ticket sales. That's how you end up with a guy like Josh McCown as your damn quarterback. Now, where does this leave Johnny Manziel? Reports out of training camp have been that Manziel is Manziel. You'll see the odd great play, and then you'll see him fumble a couple snaps in a row. The question that I want you to keep in mind whenever you hear about the Browns is which quarterback would start if they tied. And that's the question to keep in mind with any training camp battle. If the two players are in a dead heat, who gets the start? I think it's still McCown, and I think that's ridiculous. I believe that McCown gets that start because if this coaching staff starts McCown, they can say, well, we started the guy that you gave us and we lost. We lost because of what you gave us. We did our best with it, but hey, we lost. Our jobs should still be safe. If they're risky and they start Johnny Manziel and then they lose, well, then it's on them because they went against what management and ownership gave them. They made the risky decision, and then the lost season is on their shoulders and likely cost them their job, especially in Cleveland, where everything costs everybody a job. Big thing to look for in fantasy football for the Browns is the running back situation. They've got Alex Mack back at center, so they do have a very good offensive line. Now it's between Terrence West, Duke Johnson, Isaiah Crowell. This is one of those three-man rotations, if you want to call it, a timeshare right now. I'll tell you off the bat that I think Terrence West is the number 3 in this, as I think he should be. I don't think that was a good pick last year. I don't think he's ever going to turn into much more than a complimentary guy. Make some catches out of the backfield, maybe. Isaiah Crowell, I see him being the starter right now. But he was an undrafted free agent last year, and Duke Johnson was a third-round pick this year. So it would be so easy to move past Crowell and go to Duke Johnson. Whether it's a fumble, one bad game, it's not like Crowell is a veteran that just has a lock on this position, even though I think he's wildly talented, one of my favorite players in the league. Duke Johnson's obviously the hot name out of this because he's a rookie. People get excited about rookies, especially if they have a chance at being the starting running back. What worries me about this was when I look to the 2014 season, the Browns showed zero dedication to sticking with one running back. They ran out Ben Tate sometimes. Then it was Terrence West. Then it was Isaiah Crowell. Isaiah Crowell would string 5 great runs together and then be on the bench for the rest of the game. I think this will kind of be like the New England Patriots. And this is the only way the Browns could ever be like the Patriots. I think that it's going to frustrate you more than it's worth. If I could pick any running back out of this, obviously it's not going to be West, Crowell and Johnson, I have them almost in a dead heat. Whoever you can get at a better ADP, because I think they're both going to see a ton of the field. Duke Johnson's ceiling is higher. I'll give you that because he is being used as a receiver in some sub packages. There could be some situations where Isaiah Crowell is the running back, Duke Johnson is a slot receiver. So I suppose I've talked myself into Duke Johnson, but I've heard a lot of people really proclaiming him as the starter, as this great sleeper. Again, the word sleeper is just idiotic. However you use it, it implies that you know something that the rest of the world doesn't. And if you do, congrats, but I don't know how often that actually happens. So only go after that running back position if you're getting great value. And I see the Cleveland Browns being really talent-wise, they're a 9-7, 10-6 team, but with that quarterback, what that's going to do to the offense, I see them being 6-10 or 5-11. Basement of the division. quite comfortably. So that's it for the AFC North. We'll take a quick coffee break here. Come right back. We will look at the AFC East. Now, when we look to the AFC East, of course, first we've got to start with the New England Patriots. Now, there is a storyline around the Patriots, something about Tom Brady, Jimmy Garoppolo, all that stuff. That's not going to matter. The Patriots are going to come out and they're going to angry their way to a playoff spot. We all know that's going to happen. Bill Belichick is going to be a better coach because of this. The Patriots are going to be a better team because of Deflategate. Because that's how the world works. And that's how the NFL works. Now, some additions the Patriots have made. They added Bradley Fletcher at corner. Devin McCourty, they re-signed him. Malcolm Brown, defensive lineman, one of my favorite picks in the entire draft. I think he's going to help out a lot. But listen to this list of people they've lost, and this is just the highlights. Kyle Arrington, Darrelle Revis, Brandon Browner, Vince Wilfork, Shane Vereen. I mean, Jesus, that is some pillars of that Super Bowl team. Their secondary is in absolute shambles right now. They did have a draft that was strange, to say the least. I did not like many of their picks past Malcolm Brown. They drafted a long snapper, for God's sake. A lot of it, you just boil it down to, well, that's Bill Belichick. Let's trust it. Let's trust that this is going to be a good idea. But I was a little confused, and I'm really confused with how they've built this roster with the secondary. The year that they lost to the New York Giants, that was because their secondary was exposed. And last year, they build the secondary and they win the Super Bowl. So I'm not sure where the thinking is here. But again, it's the Patriots. Garoppolo is going to be a non-issue. Fantasy-wise, I think it's going to be absolutely fine with guys like Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman. Because as I've said before, Garoppolo is a quick drop-back rhythm passer. He's going to hit people over the middle, 10-yard routes, slant routes. But he's also got a little pop if he does need to go downfield to someone like Brandon LaFell. And it's not like Tom Brady has that downfield arm anymore. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be just fine. In terms of arm talent, what's the difference between he and Tom Brady? Tom Brady doesn't get by on arm talent. He gets by on managing the game probably better than anyone in the league still. So as long as Belichick can put Garoppolo in the right plays, no problem. They'll probably come through that 3-1 through his 4 games. No worse than 2-2. The reason that they will lose this year, something to worry about, it's that secondary. It's very weak around Devin McCourty. They might need to move him around to cornerback on some plays even. But my worry is that if they do get exposed with that, if they do get down, can Tom Brady really throw his way back into a high-scoring game? If the game's 16-10, give Tom Brady the ball, he's going to win 17-16, absolutely. But when the score starts getting up in the high 20s, 30s, is Tom Brady still going to keep track? I don't know. My prediction is that they end up 11-5 this year. Right around 11-5, maybe even 12-4. Again, Deflategate isn't going to do a damn thing to the New England Patriots. I've heard so much about how it is going to do something. That's just fluff. They're going to come back just as strong as they ever have. Then we look at the Miami Dolphins, who have had one of the most interesting and one of the best off seasons. Added Ndamukong Suh, Jordan Cameron, traded for Kenny Stills, drafted Devontae Parker, signed Greg Jennings, which kind of sucked, but what can you do? Now, they lost Mike Wallace, which is good because he's nothing but a headache. Lost Brian Hartline, another possession receiver, but again, they've gotten so many new pieces. Lost Randy Starks, Donnell Ellerbe, Charles Clay. These are losses, but again, they've been directly replaced. This offense around Ryan Tannehill, now, of course, Ryan Tannehill is all you hear about now. A breakout season this, breakout season. It's not going to be necessarily a breakout season. Of course, this time of year, there's nothing else to write about between minicamp and training camp, so people need to kind of clickbait you with the 585 reasons that Ryan Tannehill will be a breakout player in a slideshow. But last year, he was on the fringe of being a top 10 fantasy quarterback. He was better than a lot of guys that we consider to be established veteran stars in this league. Ryan Tannehill is fine already. I think that this year, the offensive changes might take a few weeks to get used to, which could limit his value a bit out of the gate. Early on, people might be saying, well, where's the breakthrough? Just wait a little bit. Because when these pieces do click, you're going to have Stills on the outside, Devontae Parker on the outside, hopefully by opening day. He's got that foot injury he's dealing with. And then you're going to have Jordan Cameron on the inside. Absolutely fantastic target if he can stay healthy. And there's going to be a lot of options for Ryan Tannehill. One thing to look at fantasy-wise is the backfield. LaMar Miller or Ajayi. What's that going to shake out like? Now, Ajayi slipped all the way to the 5th round despite being probably a second-round talent, an extremely talented receiving back. And I am guilty, like many people are guilty, but myself especially, of getting a little too low on LaMar Miller. I want to see LaMar Miller get a full chance at being a starting running back with this offense around him. I think that he can easily be the 1,000-yard rusher and really contribute in the receiving game, maybe with Ajayi taking some of the passing downs. But I was very guilty of just seeing the Ajayi coming in and saying, oh, well, I love the rookie. Get LaMar Miller out of there. But LaMar Miller I almost view in the same realm as a Bishop Sankey this year. I got so down on him. I just started to believe he was so mediocre. But I'm going to open up my mind a little bit and at least let them prove to me that they're bad. LaMar Miller's a talented guy. If he can hit the holes a little bit better, some better vision, better technique, just like Bishop Sankey. They're talented as hell. They just need the mental side to come with it. And I think LaMar Miller is going to have an incredible amount of opportunities with this defense. And that defense is going to be what makes these Dolphins compete this year. They're going to match up with Brady. They're going to match up and slug it out with the Buffalo Bills defensively. Having Ndamukong Suh up there changes everything. It makes every player behind him better. The only way that I see this team not making the playoffs is, A, if there's a big injury, but B, if it takes a little bit too long for that offense to come together. If it takes 3 or 4 weeks to develop chemistry, no problem. If it gets up to 6 weeks, then there's a problem. But I see the Dolphins being a 10-6 team, not winning the division, but really pushing for that wild card. And one team they're going to be battling with in that wild card is the Buffalo Bills. Now, they've had a wild offseason. LaShawn McCoy in, Percy Harvin in, Charles Clay in, Matt Castle, he's there, I guess, and Tyrod Taylor in at quarterback, who I think should be the starting quarterback come week 1. Now, they've lost C.J. Spiller, Denoris Searcy at safety, which is big, Scott Chandler, who I just like, so shout out Scott Chandler. I think that this offense is going to be just a classic Rex Ryan offense, which means a quarterback that you try to limit the impact of. Maybe Tyrod Taylor makes some plays with his legs. And then he's going to run it down your throat. One of the most important signings on this team was fullback Jerome Felton. Now here I go running off about fullbacks again, but Jerome Felton is going to pave the way for LaShawn McCoy and for Fred Jackson. Don't forget about Fred Jackson, who should easily get 100 touches this year. I think they are going to run the ball a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean more than you are assuming. Picture a number in your head, more than that. Now, they lost Kiko Alonso in that deal for LaShawn McCoy, but they are going to be getting a guy that they can center their offense around, and especially with a quarterback who, regardless of if it's Manuel, Castle, or Tyrod Taylor, it's a bad starting quarterback out of the gates. I love Tyrod Taylor's potential, but what's he really shown us in regular season games? Nothing yet. So you need that guy you can dump it off to. That's why Charles Clay is important here, too, because you don't have that franchise quarterback yet. Is that quarterback going to be able to get it out to Sammy Watkins? That's why this quarterback play is the reason I have listed here in my paper about why these Bills won't make the playoffs. You've got Sammy Watkins out there who you sold the farm for him. Is the quarterback going to be able to get it to Watkins, or is Watkins going to kind of wafer around another one of these 1,000-yard seasons that doesn't have a huge impact that you should be seeing from the number 4 overall pick? But this defense is obviously the strength. Starts with Marcel Darius, Mario Williams, throw in Rex Ryan. He's going to have some incredible blitz packages coming from this. Real potential to be the number 1 defense in the league, and that's what Rex Ryan is. He's a number 1 defense type of guy. I see this team being in close games every game. The margin of victory or the margin of loss for the Bills could be tighter than any team in the league this year. It's going to be a very fine line because I don't think the offense can run away with it, and I don't think the defense is going to let another team run away with it. Because of that, I see them being right around that 8-8, but I think they're better than that. So 9-7, I'll say the Bills will be. If they get anything at quarterback, maybe they surprise, they run out to 10-6. And I think it's them and the Dolphins in that wild card race. Head-to-head. So those divisional games, huge. They're just like playoff games. Doesn't matter if it's in September. Then at the end, we look at the New York Jets, who, kind of like the Bills, incredible defense, not a lot at quarterback. Now, they've added Darrelle Revis, Brandon Marshall, Antonio Cromartie, Buster Screen, Leonard Williams in the draft. What a pick. And they've added Ryan Fitzpatrick to, I don't want to say compete with Geno Smith, because the Jets are being absolute fools and saying that Geno Smith is the starter no matter what. They lost Chris Johnson, whatever. Lost Percy Harvin, again, whatever. And really, Rex Ryan might be their biggest loss when it comes to this season. Now, out of the backfield, they've got Ivory and they've got Ridley out of the backfield. Can Ivory develop into that 1,000-yard fantasy back? Maybe this is the year. Now, what's Stephen Ridley going to be? Is he just going to be that receiving back? Can Geno Smith even make use of that? But I have had some people talking to me about this Jets backfield situation. I see Chris Ivory being the guy that you want, especially because who are you going to go to for a touchdown in the red zone? I don't trust Geno Smith in the red zone, even though he does have Eric Decker, who you should be drafting higher, Brandon Marshall, who you should be drafting higher. I don't trust Geno to get it to them. It's going to be a lot of Chris Ivory banging it up the middle. And back to Decker and Marshall here. I don't think that they are young, elite options by any means. But garbage yards. A 40-yard pass in the fourth quarter when you're down by 50 counts for the same fantasy points as the first play of the game. Do not sleep on garbage yards. That's why I always like a receiver that might be on a bad team with a good quarterback. That's a dream situation. Good receiver, good quarterback, bad team. Because that says garbage yards to me. So don't write off Decker and Marshall. I've seen a lot of people do that in my mock drafts. Big mistake. So if they're going to win, they're going to have to do it like the Browns would do. Play great defense and just survive on offense. Maybe score a defensive touchdown, create turnovers. But with Geno Smith at quarterback, I see that being a huge error. And it's a close-minded approach. What is wrong with Ryan Fitzpatrick? People see him as a game manager, which is a ridiculous name that we throw on quarterbacks that we don't really understand. It's French for intelligent, I guess. Ryan Fitzpatrick is an intelligent quarterback. He was having a great run with the Houston Texans last year. Didn't really deserve to lose his job. Didn't have a lot of offense around him. Arian Foster was getting injured a lot. Ryan Fitzpatrick has, he's not even a top 20 quarterback. But he's gotten the short end of the stick wherever he's gone, I feel. And, maybe it's just because he's one of my guys. He's the gritty kind of role player, which I guess you don't want a quarterback to be a role player. But he's always been one of my guys, and I can almost guarantee you that he'll be starting some football games this year. So I see the Jets being a 5-11, 6-8 type team. They're not going to make any noise in the playoff picture, but with that defense, they could really impact the Bills, the Dolphins, the Patriots. they're a team with enough guys on D to just blow up a game, ruin the playoff race. And for the Jets, that's enough for this year. All the changes that have gone on there, I think they know that this isn't quite the year yet. So that's a look at the AFC East to go along with our look at the AFC North. Next week, we'll be doing the South and West divisions, of course. So please, if you have any questions, comments about these divisions, or if you want to know something about your own team, send it in anytime. If I'm not going to get to your team next week, I'll at least save it up for the week that I will be. So tweet in at the Backup Punter. Email thebackupunter@gmail.com if you're old school and you're still into email, which some of you are. Keep fighting the good fight. You can also visit thebackupunter.com or the Backup Punter on YouTube. And please, most importantly, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. There is always kind of a 2, 3, 4 hour gap in between when it goes up on iTunes and when I get everything uploaded on YouTube and the website. So you'll get it first, you'll get it right to your iPhone, your MacBook, or even on Stitcher, whatever podcatcher you do use for your Android device. So as always, thank you for joining the show from wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I know that it was a conscious choice to click play on this podcast, and I don't take that lightly. I really do appreciate that you gave it a listen today. My name's Keegan Matheson, and I hope that all of your punts in life stop on the 1 yard line.